On tap this hour, well, let's start with Vance Boelter. He's the man accused of killing Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband Mark and shooting State Senator John Hoffman and his wife Yvette, saying that he is now changing his plea from not guilty to guilty. This just happening this morning. Leah Beno has been covering this story from the very beginning. She joins me now with more on the story. And this is something, Leah, that we were expecting to happen. And in fact, it did this morning.
Yeah, many of us in this room have been following this for a long time, since those first few hours, right. Especially our Paul Bloom with our Fox 9 investigators, who's been following all the court proceedings. He's in the federal court right now as this is, unfolding, and some of his sourcing got some of the indications yesterday that this change of plea would be coming, and now indeed it has. What he's telling us and what we're getting word about from the courtroom is that Vance Boelter has agreed to plead guilty on all 6 federal counts. That is stalking, 2 counts of stalking, another count for the murder of Melissa Hortman, another count for the murder of her husband Mark Hortman, and then 2 counts for firearm discharge. It sounds like this is a packed courtroom, Tom. Sitting front row, Senator John Hoffman and his wife Yvette, who survived the shooting.
Multiple shots.
At their home, yes, multiple shots at them, and also, attempted toward their daughter Hope. Hortman family also in the courtroom. They, at one point before Vance Boelter was brought into the courtroom, they went into the judge's chambers and had some discussions. They apparently, again, according to some of our Fox 9 sourcing, had been consulted ahead of this change of plea, because we have received indications that this now means prosecutors taking the death penalty off the table. Right. Vance Boelter himself escorted, as you can imagine, into the courtroom by U.S. Marshals. He was shackled at his ankles, but no handcuffs, wearing jailhouse orange, looked like he lost weight, again, according to Paul Bloom, who's in the courtroom. Family of Vance Boelter is also in the courtroom. They apparently have an entire row set up for them. There's a crowded overflow area, so they do have a closed circuit TV. That's why we are sharing this with you this way, and we'll talk with Paul Bloom at a later date, but we don't have cameras in the federal courtroom, but they do have a closed circuit television there because of the amount of people that gathered to witness
it's just
this
too
change
large
of
a
plea.
group to house.
Yeah, it sounds like, you've been in lots of courtrooms in your career, as have I, with a plea deal. We know they have to go through and explain the details. Right. And there are some horrific details that it sounds like are coming out of this. Thus far, Vance Boelter has admitted to the political deadly attacks, admitting to rushing toward Melissa Hortman, shooting her multiple times as she tried to flee, also pressing a 9mm gun to her head and firing. So some of that will all weigh into the judge then ultimately accepting the plea, and then this moving forward and them waiving the need for a trial. So
they're in a recess right now, we understand?
They're in a recess right now, yes, just as of about less than 5 minutes ago or so. So we, of course, will continue monitoring Paul Bloom's communication with us and on his Twitter page to get the latest. It sounds like they're not going to have a sentencing date quite set yet, but we are waiting for all the details on that.
And we're thinking that this should wrap up today, though. Even though they're in a recess, there's more to discuss, but they should be wrapping things up today as far as the change of plea.
I can't imagine a situation where it would take so many hours to go beyond a single day. I imagine it will take some time. To
we may be a few hours
all of this,
away.
because this is getting everything on the record that they need to in order to accept the plea.
The so-called crossing the T's, dotting the I's for the plea change. You were, of course, on the air that day, that morning. I remember it was a Saturday, and a lot of us will. That date is coming up, the 1-year anniversary this weekend. What goes through your mind, Leah, when you first heard the shocking news that it was a lawmaker, and in this case, she had just been the House Speaker?
It was shock for all of us. As you know, we get information into the newsroom that we can't share publicly until we confirm it. So we had indications hours before. Not
Early.
that anyone that had passed away.
Right.
But we had indications
That there was a
hours and
shooting.
hours before that there was a shooting,
Yep.
and then when we looked up those addresses and we saw it was Melissa Hortman's home and we saw it was Senator John Hoffman's home.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been doing this like you for
Oh, yeah.
a couple decades now.
Yep.
And my stomach dropped when
Yep.
you realized who it was. And that was about 4 in the morning.
It was early.
That day, it was very early. And then, of course, you get all of your wheels turning. You call the manager, and we, started digging into trying to confirm whatever we could. And then it was later on as the morning progressed that we took to the press conference
Right.
with Governor Walz that it was indeed true, our worst fear, that
Right.
a lawmaker had been killed right in their own home.
And then we followed up on all the nuances of how this all went down with the phony cop car, the phony cop outfit, the mask that was worn.
Mm-hmm.
It was spine-chilling kind of stuff.
It was surreal, I think, for a lot of us in Minnesota as this was unfolding, especially being in the seat where you're sharing this with people, because you're telling, an area of Brooklyn Park to not leave their
Right,
home.
that's right.
Yet I'm thinking of a neighbor's soccer game that's a mile from where we're
Yeah.
talking about.
Yeah.
It means we live in this community, and all of those things are going through your mind, and you're just wanting people to be safe. And then, of course, we heard that there were law enforcement personnel going to lawmakers' homes to protect them, because it was so early hours that nobody knew what was going on and who else could possibly, if possibly,
Be a target.
be targeted.
Yeah.
And then the manhunt that went on for 43 hours. I mean, the whole weekend, to me, thinking back, that's the word that comes to mind. It was just surreal.
Yeah. And even recounting it and thinking about it, you kind of feel a pit in your stomach, don't you?
Yeah.
I do too. It's just hard to imagine that it all happened and it went down the way it did. And the Hortmans to survive, they were shot multiple times, both of them. Or excuse me, not
Hoffmans.
the Hoffmans, pardon me. The Hoffmans, multiple times each, and to survive that.
Yes.
Incredible.
Yes, and the bravery and the strength for them to talk about it later,
Yeah.
and all of these things. And my heart breaks, of course, for the families
Yes.
who have to live through this whole thing, this whole year, and now be sitting in those seats in that courtroom
Right.
today. I cannot imagine. But this seems to be the next chapter. But
Right.
it is a big chapter,
It is a
especially
big
if they can avoid a trial and this
Right.
stretching out for even longer.
Right. Leah, thanks for the insight. I know that was a day that we will never forget, certainly in our broadcast careers. And today probably will be one that we remember as well with this big change of plea. All right. Thanks, Leah.
Yep,
Leah
we'll continue
Beno.
following this.
Yeah. Thanks so much.